here for me and get my microphone. All right. So they're going to hand out a few things that we're going to use in the second part of this session. But the I in the drip effect is called intentional evangelism. You remember we talked about discipling evangelism, resource evangelism, where we've talked about these resources. They're going to hand out some of those. You don't have to do anything with them right now if you don't want to. But they're going to hand out some of those where you can put some sample brochures and things like that together for that. I also have, I brought, I don't know, a dozen or two. We just started doing thumb drives at the Gospel of Christ, and I've got some USB thumb drives with about 220 of our lessons on there, audio that you can plug into your car, use on your computer, things like that. So if anybody wants one, they're here. All you got to do is let me know you want one or come up here and get one. They're these little blue thumb drives. Like I said, they got about 220 30-minute lessons on them, so you can use them for your own benefit there. So those can also be given out to visitors. You just have to kind of get with us and let us know. These cost us about $3 a piece to make or to purchase and make. So we don't give them away in droves, but if you're doing something like a visitor's packet or something like that, we'll be glad to help you with that with the Gospel of Christ. Same with the DVDs that John's handing out. We always are welcome to give free DVDs out to congregations, especially if you're doing things in an evangelism type effort and network. And so as you get some of those things, understand that's what those are for. All right, so let's talk about intentional evangelism. But before we do, remember, yes, sir. Yes, absolutely. That all that is a generic website where we're trying to gather people's information. It's a free Bible study. We get usually between 3 and 5 of those every week because it's also put on our television program across the country. And so those cards, those are leave behind cards. You remember in the last session we talked about leave behind materials? That's what that is. If you've got those cards already, if you don't have one yet, you will have one. It's very generic. It's designed to be a leave behind. It's designed not to promote any one congregation or the gospel of Christ. When you actually go to that website, you can see our logo in TT tiny, just because it has to be there for legal reasons. But all we're trying to do is gather information. And so if somebody from Tullahoma, Tennessee scans that free Bible study, the first person I'm looking for is the congregation I think is giving those cards out. They work, okay? They don't always connect everybody, but they do work. I've got success stories across the country of people that have left them at restaurants as they leave a tip. But please, if you do leave one, make sure your tip is, it don't have to be 50% or anything, but make sure it's not $1, okay? I mean, so, don't get me beat up because you're not a good tipper, okay? But just make sure that you use them effectively. I keep one and we've also got some Am I Saved cards. I keep one of those in our post office hanging on the little cork board. I don't know if y'all's post office has one of those or not. A lot of your grocery stores do. I had somebody in Chattanooga Christmas before last, in Saudi Daisy. He said, hey, I need one of those cards. And I had given every one of them out I had. And I said, oh, wait a minute, I've got one in the pulpit that I was using as an example. He said, that's all I need, one. He said, I ordered all my Christmas presents online. And so UPS, FedEx, and USPS are all delivering to my door every day. I'm taping it on my doorpost. It works. So, but that's, and there's more of those materials up here as well. Except the folders. I only got about 10 of those. I had trouble finding those right off. But again, the folders are, there's different ways you can get those. I used to get them at D. Hoff's bookstore in Murfreesboro. But I don't know if they still have them or not, but they did. So anyway, okay, so intentional evangelism. Before we begin talking about this and seeing the slides, you have 2 more cards, your index cards. Remember, you filled out the green card, and if you did not fill out a green card, I invite you to do so. If you don't have one, we've got plenty. The green highlighted card, if you're colorblind, we can help you. But we may have to make a mark on them or something. But the green card, if you'll remember, is somebody that's not a Christian, that does not regularly attend any congregation of the Lord's church or anything like that. The yellow card, I want you to think about this just a moment, okay? The yellow card, I want you to write somebody's name down, and if you have their address and phone number, to write down. If not, that's your homework. You've got to find that information. On the yellow card, I would like for you to write somebody's name and information that is maybe not a member of the church, but they claim to be religious. Okay? Approach that delicately. Somebody who may be in a denominational setting, somebody who you know has studied the Bible somewhat, maybe, but they're just not as we would define Christian as the Bible defines Christian. Okay? So I want you to write that name down on your yellow card. Okay? Yellow card. Green card is for somebody who is definitely not a Christian. They're just somebody you know, a coworker, friend, neighbor, whatever. The second one is somebody who may be in a religious environment that is not the truth. Okay? Now you also have your orange or red card. Actually, we ended up with both. I wasn't sure if there was red cards in there or not, but there is a red card. And that may be what you have, is a red card. This red card's a little different, okay? This red card, and some of you who are members here and have been here a long time, you may need to think about this a minute. And then the ones that are not from here, you think about it in your own congregations or places that you've been in the past. The red card is somebody that you know who is a wayward Christian. Somebody who maybe sat here with you for many years in the worship services. People like that, okay? That's what I want you to write down. If you don't have anybody there, keep thinking. You'll think of somebody. That's Brian. I'll reminisce. When I preached at Pleasant View a few weeks back, and just looking around the building, I could see faces, even though they're some of them have gone on to their reward. But maybe somebody like that, maybe somebody that attended faithfully for many, many years, even at a different congregation, and now they're not. Okay, that's what your red card. Okay, that's what the red card is for. All right, so let's talk about intentional evangelism. Jude verses 22 and 23. And on some have compassion, making a distinction, but others save with fear, pulling them out of the fire, hating even the garment defiled by the flesh. I want to give you a story of a couple of internet stories that I found that some time ago that I think are very influential into this part of the lesson. In 1992, an 11-year-old boy making breakfast woke his family after a fire broke out in their Queens home yesterday, saving his parents, his aunt, and his sister. But the boy's 13-year-old brother died trying to escape the flames and smoke that rapidly consumed the small frame house, which had no smoke detectors. In the Queens blaze, firefighters found the dead boy, Gregory Lucian, at the foot of the stairs leading to the 3 bedrooms on the second story of the house. Paramedics pronounced him dead at the scene. In quotations, "I could not rescue my son. I tried to run upstairs, but the smoke was too thick and I couldn't rescue my son," the father said, as he looked in tears at the wreckage of his home, its aluminum siding and brick blackened by smoke. Commissioner Kelly said the blaze had apparently started after a wire in the living room wall short-circuited. He said the younger son, Alan, had been making breakfast when he saw the flames and yelled to a basement bedroom to his Aunt Claudette. The boy then dashed past the flames in the living room and upstairs to alert the rest of his family, Commissioner Kelly said. Mr. Lucian said he and his wife ran downstairs to investigate as the flames spread quickly, but quickly went outside. Their daughter, who fire officials identified as Natasha, 18, leaped to safety from a second-story window, her fall broken by her father, Commissioner Kelly said. Mr. Lucian said he then tried unsuccessfully to reach his son, who was apparently overcome by flames after trying to escape down the stairs. Now, this young son, we don't know the spiritual condition of that family at all or whatever, but we can kind of see the picture that's been planted in our minds here with the fire, pulling them out of the fire. This young boy couldn't be saved because nobody was able to pull him from the fire, but yet this young boy saved others. You see that? He was the one that alerted them that the fire was even there, but yet nobody could save him. They couldn't reach in and grab him. I want to read you another story, and we'll move on from there. Talking about compassion again. Same year in San Francisco, Howard Kuljian and his family were out for a walk on a damp, overcast morning at Big Lagoon Beach, playing fetch with their dog Fran. 10-foot surf churned the water just feet away like a washing machine. Signs near the beach warned of sneaker waves, the kind that suddenly roar ashore. Kuljian tossed a stick that took the dog down to the water's edge, and in an instant, authorities said, a wave swallowed it, setting off a nightmarish scramble. Everything kind of snowballed from there, Coast Guard said. Colgian's 16-year-old son, Gregory, ran to save the dog, only to be captured by the surging surf himself. Colgian followed, and then his wife, Mary. On shore, their 18-year-old daughter, Olivia, and Gregory's girlfriend could only watch. Both parents' bodies were later recovered, but the boy, presumed dead, was still missing. The dog eventually made it back to shore. As the family walked along the beach, Howard Colgian threw the stick and the dog gave chase, said Dana Jones, the state parks district superintendent. Seeing his son in the water, Colgian leapt to action and disappeared into the frigid water. Gregory managed to pull himself back onto the sand, but after realizing his father was drowning, both he and his mother went in to save him. Those are both very traumatic and heart-wrenching stories, but they're of the physical nature. Jude isn't referencing the physical nature here. He's not talking about actually reaching in and grabbing somebody out of a fire, or maybe running upon a beach and trying to save someone. But you see in both of those stories, there were situations there where people could have been saved. They could have been saved if the right action had been taken at the right time by the right person. And you know, we can't look back and say, oh, it should have been this way or it should have been that way. No, we can't do that. But in the grand scheme of things, isn't that what we do in the spiritual world? Sometimes we see somebody over here that we know is just in a sinful condition, and we look at them and we go, oh, you know, well, maybe they'll figure it out. Maybe they'll get out of the water on their own, or do we run in after them? Same thing with the fire. I mean, how many of you, and do not raise your hand, because if you raise your hand, I'm going to sick John on, big bad John on you. How many of you driving by and you saw a house on fire and you saw a little boy stick his head out of a window and say, save me, save me. And you go, huh, hope somebody comes and saves that boy. If you be one of those, like I said, if you raise your hand, John's coming after you, okay? I would, but I ate too much. That was good, by the way. Very good. But I want us to realize, though, that we're talking about souls. We're talking about eternity. It cringes my heart every time. And I know, you know, and I'm nothing. You know, I'm just a person that lives here for a very short time. You know, James would say my life is like a vapor. But so I'm nothing in comparison to what God feels about this, but I cringe. My heart hurts every time I see somebody, and I see it more often than I should. Somebody say something of the effect, well, if that's the way it's going to be, I'll see you in hell. And they mean it. They mean it. And they say, well, if God wants me to be happy, then he would do this or he would do that. And if he doesn't want that, then I'm going to be happy anyway. And if that means I'm going to hell, that's okay. No, it's not. It's not okay. And there are many things that can lead up to those types of discussions. And some of you know some of those, and some of you have been in some of those. Some of you have family in some of those. Some of you have friends. Some church members may be in that situation right now, today. As a preacher, and it's not relative to just preaching, but as a preacher, it hurts sometimes knowing that somebody is lost and they do nothing to do anything about it. But friend, let us understand as we look through this lesson that it's not just on their end, it's on ours as well. Okay? Galatians 6, 1 and 2 tells us that we are to go to someone if they're in sin, and we're to go to them in a meekness and a gentleness, and we're to approach them in that sin. Why? Because we might also fall into that place if not. But also, if you'll look at the end of that, I missed this for a long time, but it says that you're fulfilling the work of Jesus. Okay? You're fulfilling his desires. And so we need to understand that. Okay? So intentional evangelism. Well, what am I talking about? Well, first off, evangelism has to be intermodal. What do I mean by that? Well, you know, you hear a lot of talk today about how we can, we were talking at lunch about different areas of the world that you know, have been evangelized. Brazil, Costa Rica, you know, Guyana, you know, West Virginia. And y'all think I'm kidding about West Virginia? Brian, John, and myself, and probably some others here could take you to some areas that they need some evangelism, a lot. Okay? Christy's been there, she'll tell you. But when we think about that, I mean, I've shown pictures. Some of them are silly, you know. I don't think anybody's going to go on horseback to evangelize. They might. They could. They certainly could, right? You know, we go by plane, we go by train, we go by automobile, we go by boat, we go through the internet. Yes, I'm just going to tell you, I'm not the biggest fan of live streaming, and there's reasons for that, and I'll be glad to talk to you about that. But it was there, and it was good for a purpose. And I think that purpose has been abused. But I am a fan of putting content that can help people on the internet. I don't care what day of the week it is, whether it be Sunday or Thursday, okay? And that's part of my work at the Gospel of Christ. As a matter of fact, that was my first job there. I was the social media and the website guy. That's it. And now I'm the director of operations, which means I'm the janitor on Thursdays and the plumber on Tuesdays, okay? But whatever that case may be, there is good opportunities for us through the internet. Now, you have to kind of step back and take stock sometimes because, for an example, I did our own survey. John and I talked about this the other day, I think, but I did my own survey of our videos that we post. Sometimes we'll post a full-length video on Facebook. Sometimes we do these little short videos, sometimes this, that, or the other. If you're an admin on your Facebook page and y'all do live streaming, wherever it may be, Grundy Street, wherever, it don't matter. Take some time as your admin, as the admin, and look at the numbers. It may look like you've got 5,000 people watching your videos and you get excited about it. But let me tell you something. The Gospel of Christ, I'm gonna brag a little bit on our website and social media content. We have usually between 10 and 15,000 visitors to our website every single month. Our app has 7,000 active users every single month. Our social media pages, we've got over 7,000 people on our Facebook page, 4,000 on our YouTube page. I mean, I could bore you all day long with numbers. That's me. I do numbers, okay? But numbers are real evidence of things. Let me teach you something. If you go on Facebook and you're an admin, you go in and you start looking at those videos, 5,000 watched. If you'll notice out there beside it, it'll say 3 seconds. If you're on Facebook, you know what that means, right? You're on your phone, you're scrolling. Isn't that funny? 2 or 3 years ago, I wouldn't have been on my phone. And last night, I was sitting there working on my lessons, getting everything tied together, and I'm sitting there and I've got my phone out. My computer's open in my lap. My iPad's sitting on the couch, and I've got my phone out going, looking, squinting to read what I could read. But as we're on our phone and we're scrolling and there's a video and we stop and say something to our wife or whatever the case may be, guess what? We're a statistic. We're a 3-second statistic. Well, now they measure it 1 second, 3 seconds, and 1 minute. Our videos are 28 minutes, 30 seconds from start to finish. Now, like I said, we do post some what we call shorts, which are usually between 45 seconds and 2 minutes. Those 45 seconds to 2 minutes one get more views, I'll admit that, but a lot of them don't get anywhere. Our average watch time on Facebook this year, average watch time on Facebook is 14 seconds. 14 seconds. Now, take that for what it's worth, all right? Now, when I go to our YouTube channel, it's 18 minutes. When I go to our app, it's 24 minutes. So I guess what I'm saying is yes, we need to sow the seed out as broad as we can, but let's not think that seed is always falling where we think it's falling. It may be falling over here and it's going to get sorted out, right? Let's make sure that we're not focused too much on one method, because that method may not be the end all be all right? I'll get off of that soapbox there. Luke 13, 18 through 21. I think of Luke being an evangelism book. There are several places in Luke. We're going to jump around a few of them. But in Luke chapter 13, 18 through 21, the relevance of the mustard seed is there. Now, I've never grown. I grew a garden for 3 years in Morrison. I thought I was a professional by that 3rd year, but oh boy, did I get some weird stuff growing in that garden. I had never seen corn that looked like cucumbers, but guess what? But the thing is the mustard seed. I never planted one. I planted some unusual things. I planted okra before that got like that big, right? But I've never planted a mustard seed, the smallest of the tiniest, but it grew to be one of the biggest. That's the seed Jesus is talking about. That one little bitty tiny seed that we put out there may grow into the biggest thing. There's not a person in this room that's a Christian now that wasn't given a seed, was there? I shouldn't say that. Maybe somebody picked up your Bible and you read the Bible and you realized what you need to do to be saved. But most likely, that's not the case. Most likely, you heard something planted. You went to some worship service. Something you went to caused a seed to be planted in your heart, and it sprawled, right? I can't help but think about the attitude of just one more. We're talking about some different speakers at Freed Hardeman, and I believe it was Gus Nichols was baptized by somebody who was baptized. In other words, it started with one person. And now Gus Nichols is known to have baptized thousands and thousands of people during his lifetime. Can you imagine if we didn't have that one person? B.J. Clark, if you've never heard the lesson of the power of one, he'll tell you. He'll tell you about it. He'll tell you about one person that was changed. And that one person, I hate to give away the the plot of the movie, but that one person was his dad who was lost. And his dad was converted to Christ. And now you have B.J. Clark, the director of the Memphis School of Preaching, whose son is also a preacher and the enrollment advisor at the Memphis School of Preaching, who, guess what? They're training preachers to do what? To teach others. Think of the power of one, okay? And so, yes, absolutely, that intermodal fact that we're in, the point that we're in, yes, it takes of that. And I flipped the wrong way. It's going to take a second. And then it'll probably go through about 30 slides. Hang on. That's the challenge of making slides with animation on them. All right. So evangelism has to be interrupting. Okay. This is a fun lesson, kind of. It has to be interrupting. We got to stop. You know, we got to interrupt people's lives. I've already talked about Luke chapter 9 just a little bit, but I want you to look at what he says here, what Jesus says. If anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself. Take up his cross daily. Follow me. I want to say that, you know, that these things are going to happen. What profit is it if a man gains the whole world and destroys his own soul? Whoever is ashamed of me and my words, of him, Son of Man, I will be ashamed of when he comes in his own glory. And so we need to understand that life has to be interrupted in evangelism. It has to be interrupted with us as the evangelizer, yes, if that's a word, and it has to be interrupted in the evangelizee, the person that you're reaching. On Luke 11, chapter 5, or verse number 5 through 13, talks about, you know, the friend going over to the person's house in the middle of the night. Now, you know, you're liable to get shot doing that today, right? But I know, you know, when we lived in Morrison, we lived across the street from Don and Teresa Prater. Several of y'all know them. Well, Don and Teresa, mostly Teresa, and I were on constant text messages, sometimes in the middle of the night, because the coyotes, they raised cows, I raised goats, you know, and we would compare notes. All right, how many coyotes you got over there tonight? And I hear them, you know. And so, can you imagine if I text Teresa at, I say middle of the night, 11:30, I think is the latest I ever did. But I text Teresa at 11:30 and I said, hey, Teresa, I hear coyotes in your field. Or I called her and said, hey, I hear coyotes. And she answers back and she says, yeah, I'm bringing them over there. I mean, you know, is that representative of what happened? No. And so Jesus says, you know, of who of you would ask for this and you give him a stone if you ask for bread, or if you ask for fish, you'll give him a serpent, or if you ask for an egg, you'll offer him a scorpion. We've got to interrupt people's lives. We've got to be interrupted, and we've got to interrupt their lives. And he goes on in Luke chapter 9 again, and we've already talked about this just a little bit, but, you know, for time's sake, I'm not going to get into the whole thing there, but there were times in which Jesus would approach these people in all the four gospel accounts, and he would give them the information of this particular setting. And this setting is you need to lay these things aside, you need to get busy, get to work. There were excuses. I need to bury my father. Well, we've already talked about that. I bought a field, and I've never even seen it. I kind of joke about that because I kind of did that once, all right? So, but, you know, and I paid the price for it, all right? I didn't pay the price. I didn't get as much money for it as I needed to, but I paid the price for it, okay? I got a daughter getting married. Now, I had that happen a couple weeks ago. My oldest daughter was remarried, widow situation. She was remarried on a Thursday night. Well, here's the problem. It was the Thursday night of the Chattanooga Spiritual Sword Lectureship all week long. I had to make a decision. Was I going to go home early, or was I going to miss the wedding? I compromised. I got there not long before the wedding, all right? So, I mean, so Jesus went about these things, and he said, you know, if you've got all these things in mind, you're not worthy to follow me. You're not worthy. I tell the story about that last year. I grew a garden in Morrison, and y'all might appreciate this. I was out there planting my corn. I had tilled up the ground. It was beautiful. The ground looked great. You know, I thought, like I said, I thought I was a professional by the third year. And I've realized the mistakes I'd made the first year. Second year, I went crazy. I cleaned out my goat barn and my chicken coop, and I used all the remnants of that on top of my garden. That was a mistake because it was I'd go out in the morning and I'd see a little bitty zucchini. And I'd come home in the afternoon and I had a zucchini that big in that same stalk. And so, I kind of over fertilized. But the third year, I'm like, I got this, So I took a little more conditioning to it, and I laid out my corn rows, and I realized I wasn't supposed to plant my sweet corn next to my yellow corn, and I got to keep them apart a little bit. So I planted corn here, planted cucumbers, planted corn, planted tomatoes. I separated it all out so my corns wouldn't mix, right? And so I'm out there, and I got on the internet, and I thought, man, there's got to be a better way because I was planting by hand. I ain't got one of them fancy tractors. I had a tractor, but not one to plant with. And I thought, I can't do this. My back, I'm getting too old. Y'all know there's all kinds of things on the internet. Well, one of the neat things is that they teach you to take a 4-foot piece of PVC pipe, and you can either put a connector on a 45-degree turn on it at the end, or you can just, whichever way you want to do it, and you drop that seed in there. You just walk along, you drop that seed, and it just falls down on it just falls right where it needs to. You ain't got to bend over one bit. Did you know that? Well, that works okay until you get a text message. And ironically, I didn't tell you who it was that texted me because I blame him for it in part. It's Jeff Archie. And he's texting me, and I'm planting my corn, and I'm trying to text him back, and I'm planting my corn, and I'm keep trying to text him back. And y'all see exactly what I'm doing, right? What's that text say up there? Nobody putting his hand to the plow and looking at the kingdom of God. Y'all know what kind of corn rows I had there? I had a corn maze. I had a maze with one row of corn. So, it was just like that. That's the way. Notice it when I was planting because everything looked right. I'm brushing the dirt over and this, that, and the other. And about 3-4 days later, here come these I'm like, is that a weed? Why is that all the way over there? And about 3 weeks later, that's what it looked like. It was just, all kinds of, I'm like, it was embarrassing because that was the first thing you could see coming up the driveway. Tried to blame somebody else on it, but it didn't work because, Christy wasn't going to plant and my kids weren't there and, weren't there and the dogs, well, I could blame them, but I don't think it would have worked. But Jesus said you can't do that. You can't put your hand to the plow and look back. He also said, I came to send fire on the earth. He didn't come, as John mentioned earlier, he didn't come, he came to bring a sword. He came to divide. He came to seek and to save the lost. He didn't come for us to have a woohoo good time, right? Don't get me wrong. There again, I've already said, if you can't be happy as a Christian, you're missing something. All right, and I've got a lesson I can preach to you about that. Okay, how to be happy as a Christian. Jesus said, "I'm gonna interrupt your life. I'm going to interrupt your life." And I want you to think about those, especially the 12 disciples, the 12 apostles, how he interrupted their life. I want you to think about Saul on that road to Damascus, how he interrupted his life. Brief note about that. You know where the road to Damascus is, don't you? Going towards West Virginia off of 81. Yeah. Mountain City also has a road to Damascus, but you can't get there. So the road to Damascus don't lead to Damascus right now because it's washed out. But just a little insight for those who've been up in that area. But we have to be interrupting. And that's the way Jesus was with Saul. He interrupted him. Okay? We got to be the same way. We got to be interesting. Obviously, y'all may not find this stuff interesting. I hope you do. But if you don't, you're liable to be falling asleep or whatever. But we've got to be interesting when we evangelize. If we're not interesting, why do we expect people to listen? Okay? The Bible talks about that. He turned to his disciples and said privately, "Blessed are the eyes which see the things you see. For I tell you that many prophets and kings have desired to see what you see, and they've not seen it." I want you to think about that in the grand scheme of things there. There are those in the world that are lost that have not seen the glory of our God. Why? Because we've not shown it to them. We've not shown them the joy. We've not shown them the best part of Christianity is to come in heaven, but certainly the better part of Christianity too is on this earth with our brothers and sisters in Christ. He goes on in Luke chapter 10 to talk about the story with Mary and Martha, and I talk about that in another lesson about being a familial type of evangelism. That's that internal. This lesson used to be called internal evangelism because that's what you're focusing on. You're focusing on the internal side of it, your internal family, your friends, your neighbors, things like that. But we've got to be intentional. We've got to be interrupting. We've got to be interesting. You see, that's what happened with Mary and Martha. Jesus was interesting, and one heard it and the other didn't. And Jesus said, well, the one that heard, the one that's listening, the one that's interested, she's the one that's got the better part. And so a lot of times, and you know, take note. Maybe every sermon you hear doesn't set you on fire, okay? But there's going to be something in there that somebody is going to be set on fire by, okay? And so there are things that we have to realize in that particular situation that we must know reaches people. All right, here's that internal. We got to think about that. Now, I use that picture on purpose because you know I can't help but think about this young girl. She's looking out the window at something, whatever it may be. I'm building the picture in my own mind. You build your own picture, but she's trapped inside that car. She can't get out. I don't know what the situation may be. You know, parents maybe don't you get out of that car. I don't know what the deal is. All right, but she's internally trapped. Okay, she doesn't have the external circumstances that you and I might have in enjoying whatever the case may be. The easy way to explain that is the story of the brothers, the prodigal son and his older brother. You know, the more and more I read that story, the more I realize when I was younger, I got the wrong subject in the wrong order. And, you know, and we oftentimes think about that prodigal, the wasteful son being the object of the lesson, but I'm not so sure it's not the older brother being the object of the lesson, and the son being, as we looked at earlier, the kind of the antecedent to it, the description of why the subject is there. Okay? And so that older brother, yes, the prodigal came home, the son came home. Who is he represented as? The sinner. Who is the father? Our father. But notice there that the father comes running when he comes home. But here's this older brother who's upset. He's angry. He's angry because there's joy in the heart of the Father. Now, pause for a second and think about the cards that I asked you to write down. That last one there, the red one. Think about somebody who you've known who's a Christian and something caused them to be like the older brother. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's, you know, I'll throw some things out there. You know, John's preaching tomorrow. I'm not, so you don't throw eggs at him if you want. But you can paint his picture on, you know, my face on his face or whatever. But maybe there's cliques in the church, and maybe that's what caused the hardship. Maybe there's situations where there was a dispute between family, and that's what caused the hardship. Maybe they didn't like, you know, the color of the carpet that whoever decided to change it the last time around, and there's anger behind it. Or, believe it or not, and I explained to somebody earlier that I used to own a technology company, and I put in screens and projectors and things like that for churches. And I kid you not, I put one in at a congregation, and we attended that congregation at the time. Somebody got mad and left over it because put in a screen. They got mad and left. I don't know if they ever went anywhere else or not. You see, sometimes the older brother syndrome is in the church. It's here, okay? I'm not here, but it's in the church, okay? And so we need to realize that. But also, the very next chapter, there again, I think Luke is a very good evangelism chapter because here we see it all unfolding. Luke chapter 10, the 70 go out, and you know, and then you got the story of the Good Samaritan, then you got Mary and Martha, and then you got all these other things, and then you got 15 with the prodigal son, and the story of how those things come back together, and then you've got this end result in Luke chapter 16, the death, and it's done, okay? You know this story well, 19 through 31, but 26 through 31 is the emphasis. When he is, the rich man is wanting Lazarus to, dip his finger in water and put it on his tongue, and then he asks, can you go back and tell my brothers? And besides this, between us there's a great gulf fixed, so that those who want to pass from here to you cannot, nor can those from here or there pass to us. I beg you, therefore, Father, that you would send him to my father's house. Watch this now. This man is in torment. Now, we could sit here all day and decide whether or not this is a parable or a real thing. I have my beliefs. You might have yours. It doesn't matter. because what matters is the story doesn't change. That's what matters. Here's the story. Whether Jesus is describing in a figurative or a literal, it's happening. Okay? And so you've got this situation here where this man is in torment. And somebody say, well, that's prejudging. Well, I'm looking at what the Bible says. Okay? This man has the consequences for his sin. Do we not suffer consequences on this earth of our sins? So am I prejudged? Well, kind of. I mean, because I've got to live with those consequences. I'm forgiven. But this man is suffering the consequences of his life. He's in torment. And he says, I don't want to be here. Can you help me out? No, I can't help you out. What's the next thing he does? Somebody tell me.
He wants to send someone back to his brothers so they don't end up in the same condition.
Absolutely. You know, when we are studying with people, one of the hardest things to hear, and I've heard it, and I'm sure many of you have, well, my Aunt Betsy or my grandmother or so and so, they died and they weren't baptized for their remission sins, or they were a member of XYZ or this, that, or the other. And if they're not going to be in heaven, if you're telling me they can't be in heaven, well, am I telling them that, or is the Word of God telling them that? I mean, it's not my place to judge, and I tell people that all the time. Listen, it's not my place to judge. But let's say if your family member died lost, do you not think they would want somebody to tell you not to be lost? That's the most powerful answer you can have in something like that. Well, if your family member did not make it to heaven, do you not think they'd want you to know how to get to heaven? So I'm going to tell you how to get to heaven. Okay? Now, that's a tough situation. You got to be careful with that. You got to be very gentle and very compassionate. But that's what this man said. I want my brothers in heaven. How are we going to do it? As we started out in the same lesson, Jude 22 and 23, I want you to take it to heart. And we're going to flip the lever and talk about some practical. And on some have compassion, making a distinction. You see, we can love people. We can show people we love them. We can do whatever we can to bring them to Christ. And there are things that we can talk about on how to do that. And we will during the practical. Well, I'll go ahead and talk about some of them. I mean, we talked about the cards. If somebody passes away and we know some of their family or we know who their family is, send them a card. Be compassionate. Do things that will help them. You know, I have tried to force myself, and I've found myself in the habit more so now than I ever have. When somebody tells me something that is very heart-wrenching to hear. I heard something just last night from somebody. She told me about a marriage that went bad years ago. But she wanted me to know for a particular reason. I won't get into that, but she wanted me to know about it. You know what the first words out of my mouth were? Or I actually was typing, but I'm sorry. Hear that. Don't say I'm sorry because you didn't do anything. All right. That's the whole thing. And I'll step on that in just a second. But the second thing that I said to her, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. Because you know why? Because it helps me to know what to say next. Because a lot of times when people have something that's going on in their lives and it's a brick wall to them, and they tell you, and you're, oh, well, you know, that's bad to hear. You know, I had that happen once to my cousin or something like that, and you know, we just go on. We make it about ourselves instead of about them. So my goal is to press myself to say, I'm sorry to hear that. Thank you for sharing it. Because it helps me to better understand where they're at. Okay? But there are those who are not going to be saved that way. And the Bible says you go on and you pull them out with fear. You know, I don't consider myself a hellfire and brimstone preacher, but you'll hear about it when I'm preaching. I don't consider myself one of those who will try to scare you into being baptized, but you're going to hear about baptism. You're going to hear about the consequences if you're not. And so I kind of get that. I get the understanding that we're supposed to save them with fear, pulling them out of the fire. Is that a fear for me or is that a fear for them? You know, you got to decide where that fear lies. You know, I'm fearful when I'm talking to somebody about the gospel. I'll just tell you. I mean, it just, if you're sitting down and you're talking to somebody about the gospel and you see that they're in a life or death soul situation, it scares me because the next words out of my mouth may end up turning them away from the gospel, or it may end up turning them to the gospel. And so we've got to be careful on how we handle certain things like that. That's intentional evangelism. All right, so I don't really, let's see if I've got a slide on this other. I just put some notes together on it. So the things that you've got, you should have a few things. I bet I didn't. Why didn't I do that, John? It's John's fault, right? Let's see if I got it in here. It's not John's fault. Recents. Yeah, okay. Well, so, did you? Right there? Dropbox? Well, I thought I saved it in there. Oh, there's right there. Yep, got it. Okay, give me a second to open it. It's just a couple of slides with some notes on it, so it won't take long to open that one. Thank you. Appreciate you sharing that. Okay, so like I said, just a couple notes on how we're going to do this. So I would like for us to work on this together a little bit. Okay, so visitors and guests. We talked about this just a little bit. So do we refer to a visitor as a visitor all the time? What do we refer to them as? Yeah. Thanks for coming to worship with us. Not thanks for visiting with us, okay? They are visiting. We get that. We know that. But the more you mention that word visitor, the more they are estranged, okay? Keep that in mind. So that may change the way you want to look at your visitor cards. I don't know. I used to print my own. I don't remember what I put on. I don't even know if I put anything on there. But the appearance. Now, you may be thinking, oh, you're talking about how we dress? Well, maybe. The appearance of everything. The appearance of when they pull up in the parking lot, what do they see? When they walk into the front door, what do they see? There again, if you follow the Gospel of Christ or myself on Facebook, you'll notice that I journal my visits. And there's three things I usually put: the picture of the sign, the picture of the outside of the building, and the picture of the auditorium. Okay? Yep, travels with Joey. And I do that to help promote the churches where I'm visiting more than anything. But people, that's what they see. When they walk in the door, that's what they see, right? And so we need to make sure they're seeing smiles, okay? Who wants to come into a building with a bunch of frowny-faced people? I don't. That's another day. That's another day in another place, like a funeral home maybe, right? But there again, opportunity there too, okay? And so we need to think about that. We need to think about the way that we appear to people. We need to think about the way we approach those who are visiting with us. There again, we've talked about. Okay, I need a volunteer. John, you to stand up as the preacher, and I need a volunteer to walk in as a visitor. Who wants to be my volunteer? Okay, Brian, thank you for volunteering. Brian, you're my visitor. So you're my visitor, and so John, you're the preacher. So I want you to approach my visitor. Hey, John. Hey. They needed you to come up here and set your PowerPoint up for the.
I'll be up there in just a minute.
Well, they said, it's just about time for a worship service to start.
I'll be up there in just a minute. Thank you.
Now, y'all may think that that's a joke, but is it? It's not, is it? All right. Same thing as what I was talking about earlier. Paul, stand up for me. So I know their names. I'll pick on somebody else in a minute. You're the door greeter. You're the door greeter, right? Brian's the visitor. He walks in. He's done snuck by us now. Hey man, you gonna watch that ball game on tonight? Did you watch that fight last night? And and you're supposed to be going towards the.
I'll talk to you in a minute.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
I'll get you in a minute, Joey.
Well,
Joey, I got.
Okay. We're having a little fun with this, but this is serious. This happens. Okay, if you don't believe me, stand outside and watch sometimes. Okay, I don't mean outside, but I mean just stand back and watch. That's what I'm asking you to do. Put your mind to what people that don't attend here every day see. Okay? We talked about folders and bags. If they work for you, great. If they don't, that's okay too. But think about how you're going to approach the visitor, what you're going to do with the visitor. All right, so those folders. I didn't keep one, but everybody, some people have a folder, right? You got a folder, and we've established that a regular sized business card without rounded corners will fit in there in those particular ones. Like I said, I think it's growthpartnersinternational.com, intl.com. You can order those for your congregation. They're not the cheapest, but they're not very expensive either. Up your information on those folders, and you can submit one of those little brochures like I made. Those are some that I had when I preached at Rock Hill in Rutherford County. There's some things on those brochures I want you to make note of. Number one is it's got our times. It's got a contact number for people at the church, not just the preacher, but also the elders. It also tells where the bathrooms are. Okay, that's very important. Okay, again, if a visitor is here and they got to go to the potty, they need to know where the potty is. Okay, they need to know kind of an order of service. They don't need to necessarily know who's locking the building, even though we need somebody to lock the building. But they need to know what an order of service is, whether you put it in that brochure or whether you make it known to them. Here's an example of that, and I think I told John this the other day. You said y'all still use little packets, right? Okay. We were at a congregation not long ago, back in the spring, that uses little packets for the Lord's Supper, and that's okay. That's fine. However you want to do that, that's fine. But we didn't know. I presented during the Bible study hour. This was one of those. It wasn't a 2-song and a prayer and a song and it wasn't one of those. All right. We were there. I presented for the gospel of Christ during the Bible study hour, and then I sat down, right? Because the preacher was going to preach, and I'm done. I'm done with my task for the day. We sit down. Well, when 10 o'clock rolls around, or whatever time it was, 10 or 11, whichever one it was, rolls around, here all these men come up to the front, and they're the ones going to serve, right? They're going to, the preacher, all these folks that are going to serve, song leader, and this, that, and the other, and they sit down. And then one man stands up, and he says, "We're now going to partake of the Lord's Supper." Uh-oh. Guess what we didn't have? We didn't have the elements of the Lord's Supper because we didn't know. I thought maybe they were going to tell somebody when it was time to do that, and they were going to give it to us. And so afterwards, I told the preacher, I said, "Listen, because I was preaching somewhere else that afternoon, I said, that's okay, but I just wanted to share this with you, that we didn't know." And he said, "Never thought about that." And of course, it wasn't his job. He is one of the elders, but it wasn't his job to think about that necessarily because he's there to preach that day, right? So keep in mind, they need to know kind of an order of service. And you could do that in that kind of falls in the behavior category too. But that can be in your brochure you hand out, whatever the case may be, if you are greeting them.
That's good to know for here. That's good information for our congregation. I'll tell you, the order of worship here is different from any congregation I've ever attended. And first Sunday here, of course, we know what happened that first Sunday that I was here. And I'll tell you about that later. But that created a lot of confusion for me. I had no idea. Am I supposed to be getting up now? I don't know.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely good for a guest preacher.
Yeah.
But what about our visitor, Brian, back here?
Well, I was a visitor that day.
Yeah.
I'm also a visitor.
So whose job is it to tell Brian? Y'all do your announcements at the end, right?
We do our announcements.
So that's not the time to tell him, right?
Right.
So whose job is it to tell Brian?
And
That's what we're looking at, right?
Yeah,
That's what we're looking at. Whether you have a door greeter, whether you have a pew greeter, somebody needs to talk to that visitor. Somebody needs to give them an idea of what you do. They may not have a clue what the Lord's Supper is. By the way, when you are doing announcements, and this is a pet peeve of mine, but people don't know what acronyms mean that are not always here, okay? They don't know what those acronyms mean. They don't know, and y'all might get upset with me for saying this, but they don't understand what separate and apart means. And that's one word, by the way, separate and apart. They don't know what that means, okay, when you talk about the collection and this, that, and the other. We gotta make sure that we don't get into too many buzzwords that you and I may know what they mean, but somebody else does not. Okay, we got to be careful with that. Like I mentioned, TBH, we did 7 or 8 of those. I think actually 8, maybe 9. And you don't know how many times the same congregation would email me and say, "What does that mean?" I didn't tell them what it meant. Well, the kids knew what it meant. That was my target. But to put it on their bulletin board, the elders want to know what it meant too, right? And so, so we've got a drip. You don't know how many people have asked me what drip means. Well, now y'all know, right? Somebody quote it for me besides John. What's the drip stand for? Uh-huh. What else? Okay. Intentional. Okay. Practical. Yeah, practical. so, yeah. So you see where I'm going with that, right? I mean, there are things that you might look at in the bulletin and go, "What in the world are they talking about?" Well, we've got the tabs. I think y'all participate in tabs. Okay, we got tabs. I still don't know what tabs stands for. I have no idea. There you go. See? But guess what? I've been around the church most of my life, and I had no idea what it meant. Okay. Well, hey, it's helping enrich youth or something like that. Edify youth. Yeah. But that's my point. PTP. Who knows what PTP is? Powers in the pulpit. FHU. Well, that's freed. Everybody knows what freed is. Wait a minute, it's freed Hardeman. So you see where I'm going with that, right? I mean, we can make up all these words, and our members probably know what most of them mean. Some of them don't. I finally asked that once. It was I can't even remember what it was now, but it's several months ago, and it kept being announced at Morrison. And of course, I'm not always there, so I think, what a miss. And so they kept announcing this one thing that was going on, and I finally texted Chris Perry, the preacher, and I said, "Chris, what is this?" He said, "I really don't know." He's the preacher. It was a woman's thing, but it was being announced, and I said, "Chris, what is this?" He said, "I don't know." But an hour later, he texted me, I'm like, "Oh, it didn't matter to us anyway." But, so anyway, so what MDR, yeah. Our behavior, that is what that is. Response. How should you respond to a visitor, fellow worshiper? How should you? I'm talking about after the service is over, they're on the way out the door. Okay.
Not over, not
Lunch or sit down or invite them to have a piece of pie.
Brian, you're my visitor. Stand up, please.
what?
Brian is the visitor. He's got to stand
Why
up
are you asking him to stand up?
because he's leaving. He's going to leave.
Thought
Yeah.
you were trying to
Stand up. Get
get
ready to
all
leave.
the visitors to stand
Okay.
up.
Okay. Well, here, walk back by Philip. Here, walk back here. Yeah. Get your Bible. Well, you didn't bring a Bible. You're just a visitor. Hey man, it was great to see you today. Hey Philip, we're going over here to lunch to eat. You want to go with us? Man, come back tonight when we meet again at 5. Okay, we appreciate you.
All right.
You want to go eat with us? Sure. Okay, great, thanks. Hey, don't forget, come back and see us. Okay.
All right.
Y'all don't know how many times that happens. You may not realize it. Thanks for coming back, by the way, Brian. You did come back, so now we'll have lunch one day. But that happens, okay? Here's the thing. I'm going to say 50% of people will say no right off the bat. But if there's somebody that's visiting with you, offer to take them to lunch. Offer. Don't even say, well, we're thinking about going to lunch. Would you want to go with us? No. You just say, hey, some of us go after the detention in Morrison's easy. Several from the congregation go to the detention. That way, when somebody gets there and they do see another person they were sitting beside, I've opened the door there and said, hey, several of us go to the detention after services. Won't you join us? Come on. My treat. Whatever, okay? Maybe you assign people in the congregation to do that, okay? Elders, deacons, whatever. When I'm saying whatever, maybe have an allowance for that in your budget somewhere, okay? I'm not saying that's something you have to do. I'm just saying that's an idea. It's an idea that you think about that, if we've got Marion Turner. Some of y'all know Marion. Marion will buy people's lunch he ain't never met. I mean, he don't care. He'll give you his lunch. Yeah. We were down at J&G one day, and I was eating, and I turned around, and I looked back, and there's a piece of pizza on my plate. And where'd that come from? He's over across the table. He's like, I can't eat it. Go ahead. So, but, what I'm saying is what's $20? I mean, I know $20 is a lot, but what's $20 when it comes to maybe sitting down and building a relationship? How do you evangelize? What's that word? Personal. How are you personal if you don't build a relationship? Okay? Follow up. How do you follow up with a visitor? Yeah, John, you've got the colored cards up there, and I know he's experienced that, and I think y'all are maybe gonna try some of that. But, this one, this thinking of you card, I mean, like, that probably doesn't fit for a visitor, just to be honest. Those probably fit much better. You can grab those if you want to show them.
And I forgot to bring them.
Yeah, were you visited somewhere? Yeah.
We visited at, Sywell Road in Jackson at the end of September when we went on vacation. That's where we got 3 cards from different members of the congregation. And we also they had a really good bulletin that, we loved what they had done with that as well.
Speaking of service, you've got a lot of ladies, a lot of times older ladies.
Yes, you can't do
that
some of these other
want
things.
you don't even know where I'm going with that. That want to do something and don't feel like they have anything to contribute or something, but they may be artsy. They may can make you cards.
Good,
Monday morning coffee girls. Who
Good.
are my Monday morning coffee girls?
good, excellent, thank you. I'll use that as an example,
Not
thank you.
that send them out, but that make them. Maybe they're homebound, they can't get out, but they like to.
They draw stick figures, that's what I do.
Not just to dress them and send it out, but actually make them. And how special is that if you get a handmade card?
Yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am. Good. Good, good. Well, like I mentioned, especially like with the funeral or the obituary, be careful with your scriptures. Just be careful with them. That's great. If it's a visitor, I mean, hey, they came here first. Yes, 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 yes.
These unfortunately
Um,
are not actually greeting cards the way I thought
Yeah,
they were when I
well,
bought them.
yeah.
They're just like postcards and go inside
yeah.
envelopes.
So anyway, you see the example I've got is blank inside, and John, he didn't get the
I
right
thought-
cards, but
thought
it would
I
be
got
something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, it doesn't have a whole lot of foo-foo in it, but if you've got somebody that has some real pretty handwriting and you want to have something in there, that's fine. But here's the thing. Please don't sign it Grundy Street Church of Christ, because you're not the church. You're part of the church, but you're not the church, okay? Who are you? You're your person, right? Okay. My suggestion is now, a visitor, you might need to put on there, we appreciate you coming and worshiping with us at Grundy Street Church of Christ, and then sign and I hand sign nearly everything that we send out from the Gospel of Christ. Sometimes that makes my hand hurt. But you know what? People appreciate it. I've had people come up to me in Oklahoma that had, I mean, from months earlier, they knew I was coming at some point in time, and they brought the card that I had sent them as a personal thank you card, and brought it to me, and she said, I keep this on my dresser every day. And I'm like, wow. And so it makes a difference when you handwrite a message and you sign it personally instead of just as the church. Okay, so spent more time on that in a minute too. Whoop. There we go. Okay, let's talk about community efforts real quick. Have y'all done any door knocking here in the recent years? Okay, good. How much? What? Years? Been years. Okay. Everybody has a different opinion about door knocking. I want to go back and I want to give you my criteria of why I say I know that door knocking works. I ran and owned and managed a successful door-to-door sales company for over 25 years. Okay? I know door knocking still works. I know the way that we do door knocking, I say we as the church, does not work. Okay? Here's the thing. I'm trying to think who I want to pick on now. Paul, I'm going to knock on your door. I'm going to knock on your door. Hold on, I ain't knocked on your door yet.
What in the world do you want?
Well, if you'll open your door, I'll tell you. Well, you can't open the door because I'm standing in the door, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hey, I'm with the Grundy Street Church of Christ, and I wanted to invite you to our gospel meeting that we're having, and
You read everything?
yeah. Yeah, I want to invite you to that gospel meeting that we're having, and won't you come be with us next Sunday?
I don't think I'm interested.
Oh, well, keep a flyer anyway. What have I done there? No? Okay. What if, okay, John, stand up with me. You're standing with me, okay? What if I knock on this door? Hey, how you doing? I'm Joey. This is my friend John. We're just Christians that worship nearby at the church down here, and we just want to stop by today. There's been a whole lot of negative things happening in the world, and we know sometimes that impacts our community. And I just wanted to stop by. Is there anything we can pray for you for?
Well, I don't think so.
Really? I mean,
Nothing going on.
nothing going on in your life? We can pray for you. Can we pray just that you have a good day?
Go ahead.
Okay. Then you have a prayer. Okay. And then you say, well, you know what? I tell you what, since we're over here in the community, we're going to visit a lot of neighbors and everything. Do you mind? I know you said you didn't really have anything to pray about, but your wife seems to be back there going. So can I check with you in about a week or so and just see how things are going for you? Just do you mind if I write down your name here for you? Is that okay?
That's okay.
Okay, good. Well, you know what? I got to have a way to reach out to you. Can I have your phone number?
I guess.
Okay, perfect. All right, let me put that. I'm gonna put that in my. I'm a digital guy. I'm gonna put that in my phone. And let's see. You're over here at what's the address here?
301 East Grundy.
You're over here at 301 East Grundy Street. I'm gonna put that in. You know what? Don't be surprised. My wife will probably send you a card just to tell you hi. I appreciate that. My wife John will send you a card. Usually my wife is with me, but John's with me today.
This ain't that kind of church, Joe.
Okay, and so do y'all realize what I've just done?
You just confuse people. You talk
Yeah. There. You realize what I've just done? I have a contact. Do I have a cold contact or a warm contact?
He sounded a little maybe lukewarm.
Okay, but I have a contact, do I not? And guess what happens next? Card starts going out. I call in a week or so. Maybe I show back up. You're going to hear all kinds of answers to that question. Now, let me explain to you why I do that, and let me explain some of the approach that I just showed you. I probably don't even have to explain it very much. We're living in a world where somebody knocks on your door, there better be a reason they're there, right? Okay. Well, the reason we're like that is because we're defensive, correct? Okay. One of the first things I had to learn in door-to-door sales was that's not my door. That's your door. I got to get away from your door. That's your space. My space is way out here, okay? And so if you're door knocking, you don't want to have 10 things in you don't want to be like this right here, okay? You don't want to have a bunch of stuff because then they think you're, one, trying to sell something, or two, whatever. You stay way back. Get off their porch. If you're in a porch situation, get off the porch. Let me explain to you. If you can get somebody to come outside of their house and let their door close, guess whose space they're in now? They're in your space. That's a sales technique. Once they're in your space, you now control the conversation a whole lot better than you would if they're behind a door. Okay? Unless they what? Unless they got a cat that's going to run out. Anyway, so you have kind of a better control of the situation. I'm not saying you got to control the people. I'm saying you got to control the situation. Now you can talk. Well, what happens when people are defensive about it? Well, you be friendly first off, and if they don't want to talk to you, that's okay. Just say, hey, that's fine. Appreciate that. Hey, if you don't mind, I got this little Bible study card. If you don't mind to share that with somebody, maybe I appreciate that. If you ever need anything, we're right down the road here. Be glad to talk to you, whatever the case may be. Okay. What this is doing is it's building. All right. Let me put it in the sales world. What I'm doing is, first off, I'm selling myself. I'm not selling anything I have. I'm selling myself because I'm wanting to build a relationship with these people. I was successful in door-to-door sales because I built a relationship. I told you at the start of the day, I had this formula to knock on 20 doors. I give out 250 flyers. I talk on the phone for an hour and a half. Okay? And it worked. Here's the funny thing about it. I hardly ever knocked on 20 doors. Didn't have to. I hardly ever gave out more than about 30 or 40 flyers. Didn't have to. And I hardly spent an hour and a half on the phone. I didn't have to because I built relationships. Okay? Here's what I mean by that. We were selling security systems. Okay? most of the people in the training that I had to do taught them to try to sell a security system right there at the door. We were putting the systems in for free, just getting a contract, okay? That's what we were doing. We were selling a piece of paper. That's it, really and truly. And so the goal was to get inside that house and get a signature on the dotted line and a check for the first month, right? That was the goal. But if I went full speed ahead with that goal every single time, you know what would happen? I wouldn't make any sales hardly. Sometimes, depending on where I was at, if somebody was just about broken into the day before, yeah, maybe. Oh, you won't believe how many times I heard that. We've been waiting on y'all to come by. Literally. Now, I doubt you're going to hear that much in a church door knocking environment, but somebody's waiting on you to come by. I promise you that. I promise you. Somebody is waiting. Let me give you a short of that. There was a situation I know of that a man had been away from the church for many, many years. And there were some other men that wanted him to do stuff in the church, and they got into a little disagreement. And one of the younger men reached out to me and he said, "Can you give me some advice?" He was talking to me and a couple other preachers, and I said, "Yeah, let's go to the man that's been away from the church and find out what his spiritual status is. Let's not worry about him leading a prayer or anything. Let's figure out where he's at." And he did. The young man went to him. You know what that guy said? "I've been waiting on somebody to come to me. Been waiting." Duh. Okay. So in the door knocking sales to sales environment, what I would do is I would say, "Hey, listen, I know you're busy right now, but after a while, I'm going to be back in the neighborhood. I'm talking to a few of your neighbors now. I'm talking to some later. Would 5 o'clock be okay or 7 o'clock? Which one would be better?" You see what I'm doing? I'm asking an open-ended question that has to have an answer to it. They're not going to tell me, "Well, no, I'm not." Well, 5 o'clock, yes, you're going to have some people that just slam the door shut. Okay, that's fine. What does Jesus say about those people in Luke chapter 10? You shake the dust off your feet and you move on. Why? Because he's coming through the area next. He's going to go back by those same people. Okay? So let's not get frustrated about the no's. Matter of fact, that's what we used to teach in sales was the value of a no. If it took 10 no's to get one yes, then each one of those 10 no's made you some money. Okay? It's no different in the spiritual realm. Each one of those knows if it takes you talking to 15 people to get somebody to come into this building, then you talk to 16. Okay? Because that one yes, that one time is all that matters. All right? And so our door knocking approach has to change. It has to be relationship based and not a forceful based. Let me tell you what people don't know. If you go to, we mentioned West Virginia a couple times, guess what? They don't have a clue what a gospel meeting is in West Virginia. They ain't got a clue. It's a revival. Problem with that is the revival in this area, people ain't got a clue. It's a gospel meeting. All right. Those are really two different things. John, we've discussed that. They're two different things. Thank you. They're two different things. A gospel meeting is designed to reach the people that are lost. A revival is to reach the ones who are sitting here, right? And so we need to understand that our terminology is different. So if you're handing out flyers inviting somebody to a gospel meeting, you may be wasting your paper, okay? You're probably going to get some folks that are, maybe they used to attend somewhere and they'll come, or if the speaker's somebody they are used to hearing or whatever. But what I'm saying is door knocking to hand out flyers for a gospel meeting, that might not be the best solution. Now you can combine the two, okay? Let's talk about some community events and we'll talk about how you can tie those in. Some people don't like this thought, and it's okay if you don't. And I'm not going to say it's right. I'm not going to say it's wrong. I think it's the way we've already talked about using the building for different things. There are a lot of congregations that I know of that are now having a community-style picnic, like on a Saturday. Okay, it's not a gimmick. It's just we want to introduce ourselves to you. Okay, that's what it is. Now, whether you like that idea or not, y'all got to decide. Okay, but it is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to meet the community. And when you do that, you make it known if you do that. And you make it known to the community, okay? You do that through your Facebook page. You do that through, your announcements, through flyers, through actually going out and door knocking, saying, "Hey, just want to stop by. We're going to have hot dogs over, next Saturday. Just want to meet the community." That's it, okay? So like I said, whether you think that's a good idea or not, cards, calls, and letters. We've talked about leave behind materials, leave them in public places. Yes, sir.
One of the things when you and I discussed what you were just mentioning,
Yes.
you don't go out with pamphlets, brochures. That is later.
Yes. You build a relationship first. Yes.
Build a relationship first.
Yes, yeah.
We want to make sure we didn't lose sight of that.
No, you build the relationship first. You can go back with a flyer later. Same thing with the cards. You build a relationship through the cards. I'm not saying send one card. I'm saying send 3, send 4, send 5. You send so many cards, and the reason you wrote those things on index cards, let me bring that back around full circle. Y'all have to decide what you're going to do with those 3 cards that you wrote names on. I'm going to make suggestions. The ones on the green card, I suggest you go find a nice card and you mail to them. Okay? And then maybe you ask somebody at your congregation, whether it be here or wherever else, you hand them that card and you say, hey, would you mail this person just a card saying, hey, we'd like to invite you to come visit with us at worship next Sunday? Okay? And then maybe when they do that, maybe the next week you get somebody else in the congregation to do the same thing. And just make sure you put on the card, hey, I'm a friend of Max and Michelle's, and she asked me if I'd send you a card to invite you to come visit with us, worship with us. All right? Your yellow card, that's got to be a little more stern. That yellow card, if you remember, somebody that's in a denominational type setting or something of that nature, you got to get a little more stern with that card. That card needs to be more of a, hey, we're doing this new set of Bible study. It's called Back to the Bible. We're working on those in the community, and we thought it'd be good to reach out to other people that we know that are people that like to read the Bible, and we're going to try to set up a Bible study. Would you want to meet with me on, that may be too long for a card, but you introduce the idea in the card, and then you follow up. Now that red card, that one's hot. Okay, that was very hot. Remember, that's somebody that has maybe even been here recently that hadn't been here in years, okay? Or somebody who you've been missing for a long time, or maybe your brother or your cousin or your mom or your dad or your child. That may be a card that needs to be really personal, really, really personal. But then after you mail that card, maybe it'd be a good idea, especially if you have elders, that you ask one of those elders to mail them a card. And elders, if you're in here, or if you're listening, that card needs to be something of the effect of, hey, John and I were talking, and I know you used to attend with us at worship, and can we come and meet with you? We'd like to just sit down, have a cup of coffee, whatever. And you just open the door. That's all you're doing. So your green card, your yellow card, and your red card, those are all opportunities. Now, I know there's not still 37 people here, but if 37 times 3 is what? How much? 111, I believe, if I'm doing my math right. Agree with Joe, be proud. But 111. So now we've made 111 contacts. That's 111 corn kernels that we've thrown out on the ground, right? How many of those are going to sprout up? I don't know. But how many are going to sprout up if you don't do it? Absolutely none. All right, I'm opening the floor. Questions, answers. Ideas, thoughts, criticisms. Right, but maybe put from your friends and you put your names. Get personal. Get personal. And doesn't even matter. Most of the cards I send out don't have my last name on them. But those are cards where congregations I've visited, they know who I am. If I'm sending a direct mailer out to churches, I'll put my last name. But if it's a card, if it's a thank you card for a donation or whatever, I don't sign my last name because they know who I am already. Now, if you've got 3 Johns in the congregation, you may need to put a last name. But, so yeah. First, second, third John. Yeah, absolutely. And hey, maybe all 3 of you need to write it. First, second, third John. So, but yes, that's depending on how you're using the cards, yes, put the name of the church on there. But if it's just a community type outreach, it's better to start, I think, without, you can say from your friends at or something of that nature.
If it's individual, you're making a personal relationship
Yes.
with that person, and that means more than a group of ladies meeting that's just sending out a whole bunch of cards. You don't feel quite as special as more personal. You can tell trying to form a relationship.
Yeah. John asked if I was going to do anything. I think he's trying to figure out what I wanted these Tic Tacs for. But because I thought I might get thirsty during the lessons and all. But and they're really cool. These are little bitty. I'm dropping them on the floor. These are little bitty Tic Tac packets. Those folders you've got, or you choose to do bags or whatever. I'm telling you. I mean, think about kids. When you give a kid something, when they walk in the door, they grab it and they treasure it and they hold it, right? A visitor is not much different than a kid, okay? A visitor is at a new place. They're in an uncomfortable setting. I mean, I don't care how many times, like I said, I mean, I walked into a congregation of there wasn't anybody there, but by the time I was done, there was 1,000 people there and nobody spoke, and it was the most uncomfortable situation I think I've ever been in. Because there again, I was overdressed for their situation. I mean, not everybody was in shorts and t-shirt, but I was so uncomfortable there. So uncomfortable there. But the uncomfort wasn't because of the way I was dressed. The uncomfort was because of the way I was approached or not approached. Like I said, somebody finally did grab me and say, hey, and then what's interesting about that, I didn't even know they attended there, but they said, oh, yeah, you're with the gospel of Christ. And, one of your bigger donors attends here. And I'm like, who? And they told me the name, and I said, yeah. And they said, well, they're right over there. Did you go talk to them? I'm like, no, why should I go? I didn't say that, but why should I go talk to them? I didn't know who they were. Didn't even know they attended there. I had no idea. But they are one of our continued, very prominent givers.
That was the same experience Abigail had when she attended
Yeah.
one church.
Our youngest is in Montgomery. She's at law school at Faulkner Law School, Jones School of Law. And she had to find a church home in Montgomery, and she had to do the grown-up thing. She had to go visit. And she attended one of the more popular college group churches, and nobody spoke to her. Not even the guy that opened the door for her. Didn't even speak to her. He just opened the door and she walked right in. And to my knowledge, she's not been back. She's been to 2 or 3 other congregations in that area, but she's not been to that one. So, I mean, it means, the first impression means a lot, okay? We've got to build. Yeah, she went both morning and night, so they had a second opportunity to clear up the confusion there, but they didn't. So, but there again, I mean, I can't judge that. I'm just saying somebody dropped the ball somewhere. There may have been somebody that was supposed to have been there. Keep in mind, the guy opening the door might have been a visitor. I do that sometimes.
Well, no, she said he was the door greeter person because he stood there the whole time, so he would not have been a visitor unless the
But just keep that in mind as a congregation. You don't know who you're talking to. You don't know who is talking to somebody else. Yeah, absolutely. I know. Yeah. So anyway, so these things are, I don't know, John found them. Well, I used to get them in the little cellophane package, if you remember.
John, where'd you find those? I've never seen them as little. Those are
Yeah, they're good. Okay. So the little folders or gift bags or things like that, what I suggest putting in them is take some of these, and I'm sure they will share some with you if you're from a congregation that does not have house to house. Put one of these in there. I used to put a bulletin in my visitor packets. The problem with that is if they sat there for 3 or 4 weeks, guess what? That bulletin is stale, very stale. These won't become stale, okay? These are very generic, and they're not going to become stale. So a house to house brochure, always put a pencil or a pen in your packets, okay? For a couple of reasons. Number one, I used to put them little, I call them nerd notebooks, the little folding notebooks that old men used to, sorry if anybody's got one in their pocket, but they used to put them in their pocket right there. The nerd notebooks. I used to put them in there because, we tell people, hey, if you're taking notes, well, they don't have nothing to take note on except your visitor card, and they don't want to do that, right? Yeah, there's a nerd note. Yeah. Yeah. So, but I always used to put them in there. So if you choose to, that's fine. A lot of people use digital now. But put a visitor card in there. Put a visitor card in there because as they open that, they're going to see it. It's going to reinforce what you're putting in front of them in the pew. I always would put mints in them, some form of a mint. I like the little Tic Tacs. These are a little thick for the folders, but they work. I like them. CDs, DVDs. If y'all record your lessons, maybe put one of those in there. There again, keep it fresh. You're welcome to put some of the Gospel of Christ ones in there. Got those. Thumb drives. I have been to congregations where they gave you a coffee mug as a visitor. Oh, me. Yes, there's actually been a couple of congregations I've been to. Speaking of that community events, let me share one with you because there again, I know some congregations don't feel comfortable doing like the community picnic. I want to share with you though, South Knoxville Church of Christ. Every Saturday, today, they did it. Every Saturday, they have what's called Hands and Heart. I believe that's what it's called, or Hands and Feet, maybe Hands and Feet. A couple of congregations sometimes help them, but they set up either in their parking lot or the shopping center parking lot next to them, and they feed people every Saturday. Every Saturday. Usually it's between 80 and 110 people that are there. That's just and I know some of them are coming back every week. I get it. But they usually have 5 to 6 visitors every Sunday. Take that for what it's worth. They're being compassionate. Now, with what that was being said, we were there a few weeks back, a few months back now, yes. We were there a few months back, and it was on a Sunday after a hands and feet on a Saturday, and they had tons of homemade breads that were donated for their hands and feet that they didn't have anywhere to go, so they're giving them to visitors, okay? And so, actually members, anybody that would take them, I think, but Caverns Road in Marietta, they always give fresh baked bread to their visitors, always.
Wilmington, North Carolina did the same.
And so,
and then we were at one around Christmas time, and they brought little things like cookies and candies and stuff for all the visitors.
I'm telling you, the more, let me word this the right way. The more you can put yourself in the life of the visitor, the more likely they are to want to sit down and study with you. Now, with that being said, you know what the most negative thing to getting a Bible study is? The most negative reason that you don't get Bible studies? You don't ask. You don't ask. Like I said, with back to the Bible, that's an easy setup for a Bible study. I'm not saying, I'm saying it's easy to set up for a Bible study because it's 3 little booklets, as Rob preaches. It takes, if it's somebody that knows a little bit about the Bible, maybe 30 to 45 minutes each one. Now, the fellow I baptized going through them last year, it took 9 months to get through the first book, okay? But there was extenuating circumstances. But the only thing about, I told him to turn to Genesis. He said, "Where's that?" Okay, so I mean I'm like, I'm in trouble because I had never studied with somebody that green on the Bible. Okay, and so I had to do some studying on my own about how to study with him.
One of the things that Ivan Stewart used to talk about
Yes.
is taking 2 Bibles.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Put it in front of
Yep.
you flip to
Yep.
it for them.
Absolutely. Apologetics. I'll recommend the Apologetics Press. The new one, I can't remember what it's called. It's not. I think maybe the Defending the Faith. It's not the Study Bible, but it's the Defender. Okay. As a congregation, I want you to know that I'm not trying to promote anybody's material, but I guess I am. We keep them at the Gospel of Christ. If you order 30 at a time, they're $7. If somebody's soul's not worth $7, I'd be glad to help you with that. Okay. I'm not trying to be demeaning. I'm just saying $7. You can't buy a dinner hardly at McDonald's for $7, but yet I can give somebody a Bible. Here's what's neat about that Bible. It's chock full of the plan of salvation all the way through it. You're not going to find many Bibles like that. I know World Bible School prints some stuff in the back of theirs and so forth. This one is, you turn over to Acts 2 and there's a whole, how am I to be saved? Okay, it's a good Bible. It's a really good Bible. And so, yes, you probably should have some of those. And if a visitor comes in and they don't have one, just give them one, right? Just give them one. Just say, hey, their New King James Version, okay, just so you know, they're New King James, but just say, hey, we'll use New King James here. Okay, we'll use New King James here just in case you didn't have a Bible. Would you like one? I'd be glad to give you one. Okay, well, guess what? Inside that Bible, there ought to be some other material, right? There ought to be some cards or DVDs or something. So just keep that in mind too. So anyway. So bread for visitors, anything you can do to make a visitor's visit more friendly, more relationship based. Bottles of water, absolutely. A lot of people get upset when people bring water into the church building, but you know what? It's a church building. It's a building. That's the key. Yeah. Yep. I mean, we don't want to be drinking big old Hardee's cups of coffee or anything, but if you are, that's okay, I guess too. But that's my personal preference. I don't like Hardee's coffee, but I'm just, I'm kidding. But okay, thoughts, questions, what else?
But you only get one chance to make a first impression.
Absolutely.
Talking about that, so
Yes.
you can get off on the wrong foot.
Absolutely.
Speaking of your door knocking, I know, well, at least I experienced when we went door knocking, and I guess it's a mistake we made. We identified that we were from the
Right.
Christian Street Church.
Right.
And usually the first thing they'd say, I go to Grace Baptist.
Absolutely.
And that was the end of the conversation.
But you noticed how I approached that a minute ago. Hey, we're just Christians down here at the church. I didn't even point. I'm just throwing my thumb up. I may be, the church may be over there, and I'll tell you this though. Bluefield, West Virginia. I'm trying to think if it's West Virginia or Virginia, because Bluefield is in both. Yeah. Brush Fork. That's in West Virginia. Okay. The very first year I went to West Virginia on that mission effort, I was assigned to go to Brush Fork. Or no, actually, whatchamacallit was preaching there. R.L. Rigney. R.S. Rigney. He was preaching there. But for some reason, we were there doing a door knocking campaign in that area to invite people to come down to the gospel meeting. My oldest daughter was with us, Caitlin. And so maybe the second trip. But anyway, so we're there and we're door knocking. And if you know the geographical stance of this, and I know John knows, Brian may know as well, but there's this big neighborhood up on the hill right above the church building. Okay? And church building has a sign. And we're up in this neighborhood. There's only two ways into this neighborhood. One is right before you turn at the church building. The other is right past you turn at the church building. And we're up there knocking doors. And we're telling people, hey, we're with the Brush Fork Church of Christ. We're having a gospel meeting, a revival this week. And we'd like to invite you to come and see the what? The Church of Christ. Where? Brush Fork. Where's that at? Right there. They had no idea, and they drive by it 2-3 times a day. They had no idea. So there again, it goes back to personal evangelism. We had a few visitors there that week. A couple of them were interesting, but we did have some. But they didn't know the building was even there. They didn't know what it was. Somebody even said that. Said we didn't know what that building was. We've lived here 10 years. Yeah. Yep. Multiple, I think. I think it was on the front of the building and on a sign. So I don't know. I don't know. Do they want to read? That's the question. Do they want to read? Yeah. Because we went up there and visited. Yeah, I think so. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, just around the corner, I think. Up the hill. You always go up a hill up there. Yeah, everything's on a hill. So yes, to that element of door knocking, and there again, I want to reiterate the cards, the free Bible study cards, they don't mention the Church of Christ anywhere on them. When you go to our website, on that particular website, it doesn't mention the Church of Christ anywhere on it. Not that I'm ashamed, for I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, all right? It's not that I'm ashamed, but I want to open the door. And I don't know how many people can tell you. My grandmother was a prime example. My dad tried for years. This is my mom's mom. He tried for years. And she would say to me, I was born Baptist and I'll die Baptist. And guess what? She did. All right? And that's all there was. Dad gave her a copy of Muslim Shovel. She sent the copy back to me she sent a check and a letter to the church where I preached at and said, I wanted to give this contribution to the church for the good works y'all are doing. That was a good book, by the way. And that's it. That's it. Okay. So what I'm trying to say is sometimes to open the door a different way than just plowing into the door. Okay.
To the point you made earlier, though, there were some doors people wouldn't even open for Jesus.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And there again, I mean, you don't want to make anybody mad, but don't give up either. Don't give up. So if I had knocked on Paul's door and I knew it was there and he's just sitting there and he you know what's going to happen if, and I promise you, I did this. I can give you some of my old salespeople that work for me, his name and number, you can call them. If I would knock on somebody's door, and there again, I would take at least 3 to 4 steps, at least off the porch. If they had steps, I would go all the way down to the sidewalk. Okay? That's their space. Let me give you a quick story about that. When we first moved in Morrison, Ballpark Road, we lived down a 400 and something foot driveway, and we're moving stuff in. They got a truck parked it was a Sunday afternoon. we're trying to move stuff in. Well, an all alert bulletin came out about, you'll remember this. Jeff Stevens' son had gotten abducted in Manchester. You remember that? Him and his wife, girlfriend, wife, whatever, and they were killed.
Carjacked.
Yes, carjacked. Well, they kept saying that guy was in Morrison because that's where they kidnapped them from the Smart Station area, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, just right down the road from our house. So they had an all alert bulletin for everybody to stay inside, lock your doors. A census guy came up my driveway. All right. He parked at the end of that 400 and something foot driveway, and he's walking, and I just happened to look out the window and see him. I'm like, what in the world? And you couldn't really see the road from my house. And so I saw him walking up, and I went out on the front porch. I'm in my Sunday dress clothes, just sitting there, and I said, sir, stop. I mean, he's a good ways away from the house, at least to the door and back. And I said, stop. And he said, well, wait a minute, I'm with, I said, I don't care who you're with, stop. He kept walking. I don't mean to sound forceful, but something came out of my pocket, okay? And that guy's like, whoa, 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 whoa. And I said, look, dude, I said, they've just put out an all alert bulletin about somebody, that has murdered somebody and is on the loose in this area. I said, I don't know what you're doing here. I'm with the census survey. And I said, well, come back another day. That's all I'm going to tell you. And he said, but sir, and I said, sir, I'm telling you right now, get off my property. And I said, yeah, well, I mean, that didn't matter. But I mean, I didn't know who the guy was. They still had not caught this other guy. I didn't know. They had no description of the guy. They had no description of the car. This guy was in my space, okay? Even though my space was a long ways away.
It did matter, though, because they were only sending out census people to people that had not responded to them.
Yeah, but we just moved there. So, I mean, that was kind of
the thing. It was the address difference was
Yeah.
the thing. But in my mind, I was thinking, we did ours. He's not with the census.
But he didn't know, in all fairness, he didn't know about the situation at hand. So, when I told him, he said, thank you. And then he went across the road to my neighbor's house and did the same thing, which I'm like, dude, you're going to get shot. No. So,
Everybody go in your house and lock your door.
Yeah.
Nobody was supposed to be outside.
no. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is you've got to be as least offensive as you can to those people. It's their space, okay? And if you get confrontation, leave. Don't push it. But if Paul enters, if he comes up to the door and looks out the door and he never even opens the door, you know what I'm going to do? Remember, I'm an extrovert. Christy can tell you, when we were up in Northeast Tennessee, we were way back in them hills, back in the hills and hollers. I didn't go up to people's doors. A lot of them didn't have power. Most of them didn't have water still. We're there day 7. No, we're there like day 10. And these people had no power, no water. They're running on generators. They have nothing. They're I could show you pictures. They can't get across their driveway to get out. Don't have driveways. But the ones we could get to, when I drive up into those hollers and hills, I'd honk my horn. Okay? And immediately I would say, hey, we're with the Church of Christ. Do you need supplies? Okay? And they would invite. Okay? At that point, they would invite. So you got to realize there's times and then there's times not to. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of them weren't friendly. And that's what you got to envision. Okay? So my charge to you as the Grundy Street Church of Christ and the ones that are visiting, I'll give you a different charge, but I know this area. Like I said, I attended here for some time years ago, but I know this area for more reasons. You know what? I knocked on some of these doors around you for security systems, okay? I know there's a lot of people in these neighborhoods, and they're close. They're really close by. But you know what? They don't know who the Grundy Street Church of Christ is. I don't mind telling you that. In our time in Morrison, I know of at least 4 people that moved in to the area. 2 of those on West Maple Street. Is that right? West Maple Street, whatever it is. The church is on the corner of Maple Street and Main Street at Morrison. It's a big building. It has a big sign. It has probably multiple signs out on the highway to tell people who they are. Do you know one of the persons that moved there bought eggs from me, as I did have chickens too. They bought eggs from me, and I mentioned the church multiple times. And they said, we don't know anything about the Church of Christ. I kept saying, come and see. They never came. But they lived 4 doors down from the church building. They didn't even know. Okay, I'll refer to Acts chapter 19. When those men there, and Paul said, did you receive the Holy Spirit? Who? The who what? The who? They didn't even know there was a Holy Spirit. So when we say something about church, the first thing that comes to people's mind typically is going to be a denominational body, is it not? Typically, in our area, the Baptist church, okay? And I don't know why. In Warren County, there's more Churches of Christ buildings than there is anything. But for whatever reason, people think of the Baptist church and maybe the Methodist church in those areas. I don't get it. I don't know. Maybe. They've got their name out there more, okay? That's the goal of evangelism. That's the goal of this entire process, this entire meeting. I'm thankful for everybody that's here, thankful for the elders, thankful for John, thankful for y'all who fed me. It was very, very good. I'm open to any more questions that you might have. Any other ideas and suggestions? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, my friend John? No, I'm just kidding. Family is tough. Family is tough. I'll say that. And I'll share this, and y'all can pray for them. My dad and myself are the only faithful members of the church in my family, and I have a brother and sister living. So, if that tells you anything, it's hard. Paul and I were talking about my uncle, my dad's brother. He lives right down the road from where Paul's an elder at. He's not a member of the church. It's hard. What you've got to do is, like we were talking about with the interrupting part of that, is you've got to find a way to walk into that situation. Now, there again, I have used these back to the Bible studies as a crutch many times in my own personal life. What I mean by that is there again, for an example, he just has no interest in. He thinks he's religious, okay, but he'll go to some church on Easter and Christmas, and maybe sometime he watches it online, live stream, but I don't know what he watches. But it might be good for me to go to him and say, hey, Carl, I've been studying these back to the Bible things, and there's a couple things in there that I found a little different than what Mom and Dad maybe taught us once upon a time. Hey, won't you look at these with me? Now, some people might think I'm baiting and switching. I probably am. But at the same time, you can't go through those 3 Bible studies and somebody not know the nature of the church, period. That's just it. They're dated, they're older, but they work, okay? They do work. Yeah, they work. Muscle and shovel Muscle and shovel works. I know they don't go out as much as they used to, and some people don't. Some people don't care for the way they're written or whatever. But the newer editions, I think I keep one in my truck all the time. We're not in my truck today, but I keep one in my truck. I've got an autographed copy in my truck actually, but I've got like 5, 6 copies at my house. I mean, that if I had to, I could give somebody one, because I also know, because if you give somebody Muscle and Shovel, I'll just give you a heads up on that, because my dad used to buy them by the hundreds and give them out. Some of y'all probably knew that, but he'd give them out. We'd take them everywhere, okay? But if I give out one, I always followed up with the people, because I'd ask them, all right, what chapter are you on? Because I knew when they got to chapter 14, I believe it is, I'd have to go back and look from memory, but I believe it's chapter 14 is when they're going to get that hot spot. And when they get that, they're either going to close the book and not ever read it again, or they're going to have questions. And once they have questions, that's it. So I mean, here's the thing about Bible studies. You got to ask for them. You've got to go into them with an open mind. Now, what I mean by that is you've got to realize you're not the teacher. You're doing a study. You're studying together. There may be something you find in your Bible study that you did not know. Okay? You need to realize that. You need to humble yourself to know that there's going to be times in which the person you're studying with may know more Bible than you know. That may be the case, but they may not be applying it correctly. And so I actually qualify my Bible studies. What I mean by that is I ask them, what's your history in the Bible? Do you have a Bible? What version do you use? Things like that. I qualify to know where they're at. Once I know where they're at, I know where I can start. And it depends. I may not use the back to the Bible. I like to use a blank piece of paper, draw a line down the middle. Truth, error. And we start talking about, we open up to John chapter 8. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Where does that go? Well, you make them write it down. They have to write it where? Where are they going to write it? They're going to write it on the truth side, right? And then you start moving through John a little bit more, and you start moving through some of these other verses, and all of a sudden, they got to write something under error because it didn't match what they did. And so they've either got to write that the Bible's in error or that they're in error. Well, you know what happens with my sheet of paper usually? Everything's on the left. Everything's on the truth side. And then they're looking at theirs trying to balance it and go, something ain't right here. And so don't be afraid to ask for the Bible study, but also don't be afraid to close the Bible study. What do I mean by that? Anybody ever do sales in here? Anybody do any door-to-door sales? Anybody do telemarketing sales? Nobody? Okay. Here's the thing. No matter what kind of sales it is, car sales, it don't matter. You got to close the sale. If you don't close the sale, you've left it open-ended and you don't have any money. Okay? Same is true with the Bible study. You got to close the Bible study. You got to ask them, when you get done with the Bible study, okay, what do you need to do now? What have you learned that makes you understand better about what the Bible says? Have you done that? If you've not done that, why have you not done that? Do you need to do that now? That's what that book number 3 does. That book number 3 asks you that question. Do you know you need to be baptized to be saved? Yes. Have you been baptized to be saved? No. Do you need to be baptized right now? And you ask that question out loud. The last person I asked it to, you know what happened? They said, yes, no, yes, no. I mean, they were back and forth. Bye, Paul. Love you, brother. Just get up and leave. But I get to pick on him. But you got to ask. You got to ask for the close. Okay. Here's something else very important about sales that'll blend in. All right. Now I know a lot of times we don't like to mix secular things and religious things, but you got to. Here's the thing about sales. If you can't close the deal, call the closer. Okay. Who's the closer? In my situation, it was the manager. Okay. My situation it was, and even as a regional manager, I would call my boss sometime, who was the president of the company, while I'm sitting in somebody's house over a $20 discrepancy on what they wanted to pay versus what I wanted them to pay. And I would call the boss and I'd say, hey, listen, my customer's here. They want to go ahead with the deal, but they're concerned about this $20 charge right here. Okay. A lot of times what would happen on the other end is like, man, I'm eating dinner. Do what you got to do, but I've got my closer. So, yes, sir. Yes. 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 Right. Right. Thank you, Brian. Yep. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And when I say closer, I'm not saying aggressive. I'm saying, if we're studying something, I say, well, that's a very good question. Let me call John. Let me call John real quick and ask him what his thoughts are on that. And then, talk out loud while you're talking to. I don't necessarily put them on speakerphone, but okay, well, John, here's the situation. We're studying through and Ephesians 2, chapter 8, and verse number 9. It says, "For by grace you are saved through faith, not by your own works." And I'm a little confused on how to answer that question. John, can you help me out with that? Okay. Yeah. John says, "Oh, okay. Yeah. All right, John. Let me look at that next verse. Okay, let's read that. Okay, great. Thanks, John. I appreciate your help." And hang up. Okay. He's the closer. Okay. Now John's going, all right, I hope it worked. So I mean that's the idea there. Okay. That's the thought and the process. Now, back to your question. I think about often Marshall Keeble. Never met him. Heard some of his sermons, recorded, obviously. he was born about 2 miles from Rock Hill Church of Christ. I mean, literally born there. And so, I love hearing stories about him. But I honestly don't know that Marshall Keeble could do what he did then today. I honestly don't think he could. Now, I'm not saying he couldn't help people save by helping them know their souls in jeopardy or danger, but the stories that I know about Marshall Keeble where I mean, people like lashed him out with brass knuckles and things because he's preaching a tent revival. I just don't think it would happen today. I don't think people would be that brass to come to it, for one, but I don't know that kind of preaching is what is being received today either. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, I'm not saying we don't preach it, but I think there's a time and a place. I think there is there again, I mean, John probably saw me post this Sunday, preacher prerogative, preacher perspective. I changed my sermon 2 songs into the worship service Sunday because it wasn't right. It wasn't fitting what I was told was, because it was a visiting congregation. I wasn't there, and something was said to me during the class time, and it was weighing on my heart. And I'm like, ugh, I gotta answer, I gotta answer. And so I did. And it was simply about baptism. I mean, I say simply. So they got a first principles lesson on what is a Christian. I mean, Acts chapter 11, 19 through 26. So.
Those old timey preachers, you had that high pressure, and especially if it was during the gospel meeting and stuff, it was so built up, and especially the older ones used to during the invitation song, they were hollering stuff up and everything. And I don't know, I think more people were compelled to go forward and be baptized and everything then, but
Thank y'all.
back on it, I wonder how many of them stayed as Christians or how many were just caught up in that moment because there was kind of an intense pressure
Yeah.
during that. So
And that's what I'm saying. I mean, that kind of preaching still works. But, when I go to polish the pulpit and things like that, and Rebecca and Phil, other people that have attended those types of things, they understand what I'm saying too. You get a whole lot of amens in that pulpit in the auditorium, don't you? There's a whole lot of amens when some tough preaching's going on. But I don't think you hear those amens everywhere else. Let me go back here first. Yes, sir. Yes, you can. Here's a thumb, and I'll drive it. There you go. Appreciate you. Thank you. You got one of my cards, didn't you? Yes, sir.
I was just gonna mention the 3 booklets.
Yes.
That are
Back to Bible. Yes.
uses.
Uh-huh.
They are good.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're teaching in one sense, but in another sense, the person who is studying is teaching themselves.
Absolutely.
Themselves.
Absolutely.
It's not what I'm saying, it's what the
Right.
Bible is
Absolutely.
saying. So
Absolutely.
I think that's
Yep.
powerful, and it
It
does
is.
work because I've used the last booklet with a Christian. Well, she wasn't a Christian,
Mhm.
but she had a knowledge, so we picked up
Yeah.
that book.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
didn't go through the
Right.
first 2. And another thing too, did you read the sequel to Muscle and
Yes.
Show?
I actually was one of his first reviews on Amazon on that book.
Wow, that
Yeah. It's powerful.
It-
Yeah.
I had no idea that it was going to turn out the way.
Yeah. It's different.
So
Yeah.
if no one has read the sequel,
Yeah. It's good. It's good. I don't think it's got the punch that Muscle and Shovel's got,
Well,
but
it doesn't, but it was
Yeah.
so surprising.
Yeah. Yeah.
In
Yeah.
the end,
Mhm.
who he was talking about.
Yeah. Right.
I
Absolutely.
won't say anymore.
Absolutely.
Joey, I know that some people
Yep.
need to leave.
Yep.
A lot of folks have held
Yep.
on, and they're happy to get them go
Yep.
ahead. What I would like to do, we can stick around. Anybody
Yep.
that wants to stick around has additional questions. But David, would you mind coming up and leading
Absolutely.
us in a dismissal prayer?
Thank you.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity that we've had to be together and study about evangelism. Please help us to take the things that we've studied and reviewed and learned about today and apply them and go and do as you say and go and teach others and bring others to Christ. Heavenly Father, we all know of people that are lost and outside of the body. Help us to go and reach out to them and do so without fear. Again, Heavenly Father, help us to use and apply what we've learned today. Help us to seek those people out. Thank you for this time that we've had together. May everything that we've said and done today be acceptable to you. Most of all, Heavenly Father, thank you for your Son who died for us. Heavenly Father, help us to be good examples for you. In Christ's name.